Thank you so much for joining our workshop tonight, focused on our neighborhood business grants. This is Katie from Citizens Committee for New York City, and we're doing this in partnership with Assemblywoman Joyner's office. So I'm going to hand it off first to our new-ish, you're pretty much a veteran now, CEO, Dr. Son Harris.
Absolutely.
Who's going to say a few words first.
I'll thank everyone for participating and being with us. As Katie intimated, I am the new-ish CEO of the Citizens Committee for New York City. I have all of the scars to prove it. Interestingly enough, my first day was March 16th. And for those who remember, that was the first day, if you had children that in the public school system, that they were asked to stay home. That was the first unofficial day of the pause. And so I feel like I've been a part of Citizens Committee for a little while, but also I feel like I've been a part of Citizens Committee forever because the days all bleed together and it feels like that was eons ago. We are just really excited to partner community. We wanted to first and foremost let you know that this will be recorded because we want to make sure that those who are not available at this instant can still benefit from the information that we're giving out. But we are at a really important moment of New York City's history. And what we do, what you do on your blocks and in your community will really set the path for the trajectory of this city. And so thank you for your leadership. Thank you for what you do and your volunteerism. Thank you for being entrepreneurs. Thank you for spreading the word. It would not be New York City. Really briefly, our mission is to bring New Yorkers together to improve New York City neighborhoods. We lift it up and that no one's left behind. Right now, we have 2 featured grant-making programs, definitely in the midst of COVID. One is our all-in neighborhood grants that provide assistance to block level, neighborhood level responses to what's happening in communities. And then second, right now is why you're on this call. We have our neighborhood business grant program that was started because of a gift that we got from one of our corporate donors that really emphasized that neighborhood businesses are economic engines for communities, but they also are keepers of culture. And if we're going to come back, our local businesses, especially those owned by people of color, owned by folks that are recent immigrants, those owned by women, and those that are often overlooked by the mainstream, those organizations and those businesses need to be in the main if New York City is going to come back. And it's not if New York City is going to come back, but it's when it comes back. And you need to be at the center of it. So we are proud for all the work that you do. We're proud to count you as partners. So before I give it to my colleagues, Dee and Katie, who have done tireless work, I want to make sure that I provide the overarching frame. If you don't remember anything else, applying is valuable because in the process of applying, you get connected to us. The more we know about you, the more we can offer up resources and opportunities on an ongoing basis. We will not make people apply in a way that is not useful. So number 2, in our applications, we ask people to storytell. If you can tell your story about what you're doing and tell it well, then it travels. It's not just useful. So we want to help you become storytellers because your stories are what are at the foundation of this city. And if we help you practice telling your story, hopefully it'll reach the right ears. And then lastly, I do feel, and some people might not agree because I understand money is important, but more important than grants are the networks and the social capital that you get from being engaged. So as Assemblywoman Joyner has brought you together, stay together as a community, stay connected to what we're doing at Citizens Committee as you get emails, as you get information, because there might be a class, there might be an opportunity, there might be something that you see that you should take advantage of. And applying is the first to that social capital. So without further ado, I wanted to turn over to my colleague, Katie. And again, thank you all for giving your time and your talent because New York City needs you.
Thank you so much, Rasan. And it's really good to see all of you, some familiar faces, some new faces. So as Rasan mentioned, this is a new grant program for us, the Neighborhood Business Grant. You might know us very well for our very small grants for volunteer grassroots community groups. I'm really excited that we're able to offer grants, but also continue this community building. And we're all about accessibility. So we really want to make sure that this funding is getting to people who were not able to access other forms of loans or a very small loan through PPP or SBA. So what we're here to do is really, again, provide funding and really prioritizing people who weren't able to access loans or were only able to access a small amount of loans that still need support. So with our grant goals, it's to provide up to $10,000 for small businesses within the 5 boroughs. So unfortunately, no one outside of New York City, but we're prioritizing businesses owned by women, people of color, and immigrants, which does include undocumented immigrants who would have otherwise been excluded from loans. So street vendors is one of the examples that comes to mind. And then we're really looking for is projects that are modifying their business to function during COVID-19. So for example, are you buying PPE? And we'll get more into adaptations and do some breakout rooms where you all can talk about how you're adapting right now in the face of COVID. So that's what our grant goals are. For eligibility, again, we're really focused on small businesses. So this is employees of 10 or less employees. So that is our first kind of eligibility. We also want to see that your business has lost 25% or more revenue due to COVID. So those are our eligibility requirements. For priorities, again, we do prioritize businesses owned by people of color, women, and or immigrants, or businesses established as an MWBE business, or whether or not the business is able to access some sort of loan, so PPP or SBA. So again, priorities doesn't mean that makes you ineligible. Like Rasan said, apply even if you're not sure whether or not you're going to get the grant. It is quite competitive, but there are lots of future opportunities that we're excited to be able to share with all applicants. For each group, if there were specific questions that came up that you would like to ask to the rest of the group. So really questions like, what did you get stuck on? Kind of what stood out, and what would you have a question about? If you were filling this grant out, where would you need clarity?
Yeah, we were just asking because a lot of the participants in the group didn't know if this was a grant for them. So I guess one of the questions was, is this grant good for startups, businesses, or how can, if they can be used to actually start a business with it, because with what they're doing or nonprofit, those are one of the questions that popped up with us.
That's a great question. Thank you, Cheyenne. The question in terms of can the grant money be used for a startup? Unfortunately, not. Really what we want to see is a business that has already existed and how the business has been impacted by COVID. So we do need proof that your business has lost revenue due to COVID. And so the money can't go towards startup. Another kind of along those lines, another question that came up is, can the grant, or are nonprofits eligible to receive a grant? Nonprofits are eligible. We are prioritizing though small businesses versus nonprofits, just because businesses have less access to other types of grants than nonprofits do. It doesn't make you ineligible though, so if you are a part of a nonprofit, you can definitely apply. We will have future funding opportunities. We'll have multiple rounds of this, and so we will be pooling and prioritizing groups that have applied through this round. So it's a rolling application deadline, which is something I didn't say before, but applications are rolling. So thank you, Cheyenne, for that question.
We were pretty much, I know I did ask a similar question to Cheyenne group's question as well. So is it well for startups, and how would what is the information known that has to be recorded as far as loss of time frame?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. So that question of what do you actually have to submit for proof? So in section 3 of the grant application, again, this is a sample grant application, but we ask what is the current state of business compared to pre-COVID? So for one, we want to see how much revenue has decreased either in, we have this right now when it was launched in June 2020 compared to June 2019. So any statements such as bank statements, it can be tax returns, it can be quarterly sales, tax filings. So any of those types of documents is what we look for to see that proof of decreased revenue. And then we also want to see the decrease in revenue between March and June as well. So that is kind of the supporting documents that we're looking for in that section.
Can the grant be used to assist with video technology and possible marketing strategies?
That is a great question, Sherry. And that actually pivots very well, transitions very well into our next section where we're going to talk about grant adaptations, or grant adaptations, business adaptations. So yes, the grant can go towards things like videos, especially as you're pivoting your business, if you're doing things online, towards marketing. So absolutely, we'll go into more detail about that in a little bit. But something I also kind of along those lines wanted to point out was 2 sections that we're really looking at and kind of really wanting a lot of information about as you are filling out your grant. So one is, how will you be adapting your business? That's a question that we really want to know. We're not looking for a specific adaptation. It's something that makes the most sense for your business. But we do want to know kind of how you might be changing to continue through COVID. Things are very uncertain right now. And so a lot of strategies, if we see an application saying we're going to wait, we're going to hope for a vaccine, there's no guarantee for that to happen as much as the hope is out there. So we want to see what types of adaptations you're going to do through funding. So that is one section I definitely want to make sure you all, if you're going to spend a lot of time on anything, that section where we ask about adaptations. The next section that I've seen a lot of questions about that actually didn't come up today, but was the budget section. So with the budget, we're asking for current monthly costs, and then we're asking how much of the grant will go towards these monthly costs. So for the first column, this is really helping us understand if we give you a grant of $10,000, how much is your overhead in a month? Is our grant actually going to help your business be sustainable? So if you have a cost of $30,000 towards rent, utilities, and other things in a month, we want to make sure that if you don't have any other loans, you know, our grant really won't go that far for your business. So that helps us understand what will be the impact of the grant for your business. Then the second column is really where we're trying to understand, what are you doing with the funds? So you'll see that there's this line, it says grant preference, where it says adapting business models to sustain or reopen during COVID. So we're really wanting a lot of the grant requests to go towards these adaptations. So since this kind of part is so important with the adaptations, what we're going to do is do breakout rooms again, but I want you to discuss ways of how your group, how your business is adapting during COVID. So for example, are you modifying your building to have a better HVAC or air system? Are you hosting virtual fitness classes? Are you tutoring online? So that way, again, this is all about bringing people together. We're all in for New York City, so we want to make sure that we're supporting each other as well. So some adaptations, maybe through these discussions, can actually help your business, and you can learn from each other of how you can adapt. So I'm excited to hear some of the strategies that came up. Any other thoughts that came up in terms of adapting businesses? Sherry, not to call you out, but I know that you mentioned some materials, and I see Hanat, if you want to speak.
Yeah, my name is Ramatu Ahmed, and I made reference to the African community, and also during the COVID, the kind of tools that we used to pass messages and connect with the community, the faith-based organizations, and other not-for-profit organizations. For instance, with the mayor's office and with the Department of Health, we had some. We were having some kind of information sharing with them, but we have to pass these messages to the community. Most of our people are not computer savvy or IT savvy. So what we did was to pass the messages to the imams using the WhatsApp, on WhatsApp. We have groups, women groups, youth groups. WhatsApp is a big deal. So we utilize the WhatsApp to send informations out to the imams. And the imams also have their own group. So it's like a network of communication system, which is WhatsApp. Majority of them were WhatsApp. The youth, yes, they were using the Facebook, Twitter, and the rest. But the majority of those who were in need and they don't have access to, or they don't know how to utilize these services, they know how to text their friends using WhatsApp. So that's what we use. And I was confused as to how this as an adaptation and express it in my proposal and qualify for the funding. So because I don't know how to go further with it, the facilitator, spoke to us about how we can go further with that particular scenario. So that's what I have experienced during the COVID.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great kind of, you mentioned WhatsApp and kind of doing outreach to different communities that maybe don't have access to, other forms of outreach or communication that other people might be doing. So for you, I would say, like, it sounds like you're doing a lot of one community organizing as well, but that would be adaptable to any type of business, right? Doing marketing in different ways. That's definitely an interesting tool. I would say would be through texting and doing outreach in that way for marketing. But you can also reach out to me and we can have a conversation, because something I mentioned before is adaptations are different and specific to your group. So I'd love to talk to you more about that, just to go through a little bit more with those adaptations since you got stuck there. But what you mentioned is a perfect adaptation in terms of focusing marketing in a different way.
And I also just want to quickly, what you just shared about the adaptation is great, is in lines of community organizing, that's community outreach. For businesses, that's marketing. At the same time, you might be volunteering your time or have your staff do that research and outreach. You could also think it as a way of paid salary work, that with the time you're putting into doing this thinking, doing this research, and also sending out the messages, that can be a way of adaptation and thinking about your budget. At the same time, you could also go beyond the communities and platform that can be beneficial. Of course, you know your constituents the best. If WhatsApp works for that, that's amazing. But there might be additional resources that you could take advantage of with additional funding.
Thank you.
I definitely want to reiterate that even, it is a competitive grant. We can't guarantee that we're going to give a lot of businesses funding, but with applying, there are a lot of other resources that you can then get connected to. But we're not going to be able to tell you about those resources, share those resources, connect you with people if we don't know who you are or we don't have that information. So I would say definitely apply for the grant. We will have future rounds of funding as well. So if you aren't funded in this first round, we'll prioritize those groups that have already submitted a grant. So just wanted to say apply, encourage you all to do it, even if you're not sure if you're going to get funding.